As a preliminary matter, this is Bill Hayes, Chairman of Municipal Light Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Affirmative. Mike Landers.
Here.
Eric Mitchell. We know that Eric cannot attend today's meeting, so he will not respond. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. David Lane.
Here.
Peter Korpusik.
I'm here, Bill.
Okay. Clint Allen. I can see you, but I can't hear you, Clint.
Yeah, I'm right here, Bill. Any more?
Mark Piccarini.
Yep, I'm here, Bill.
And Stephanie Doherty.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative is the next item. However, the 4 speakers are the 4 people we just confirmed are on, so I'm going to skip that. What now follows is the introduction to the remote meeting. This is from the governor's executive order. Good morning. This open meeting of the Municipal Light Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public meetings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment, if any. For this meeting, the Municipal Light Board is convening remotely via the WebEx app, as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Here are the meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comment, which is publiccomments@danversma.gov. This email meeting address is also posted with the agenda and shown online with the streaming of this meeting. Residents will email comments, and they will be provided, read out loud, after staff has confirmed their name and address. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call votes. That concludes the scripts for remotely conducted open meetings, and we will now move to the next item on the agenda, which is to receive public comments. Clint, do we have any public comments received prior to the start of the meeting?
Not at this time. There are no comments.
No comments. Okay. Remember, Clint, that we will check at the end of the meeting to see if any comments have come in. Thank you, Clint. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to accept the minutes from the meeting. So do we have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes from the prior meeting?
I move that we accept the minutes from the August 11th, 2020 meeting as written.
Thank you, Mike. This is Bill Hayes again. I will second the motion. Are there any comments on the meetings from you, Mike, or anyone else on the call?
Not me.
No, hearing no other comments, I, Bill Hayes, also have no comments, and we'll now move to a vote on the motion to accept the minutes. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted, respond aye. This is a roll call vote. Mike?
Aye.
Eric, of course, is not in attendance. This is Bill. I also vote aye. The motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda is the financials to be reviewed by Peter Korpusek. Peter, you now have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Korpusek here to review the financials for July through July 31st, 2020. If we start at page 1 and look at the sales, happily we can see, even though things have been a lot different this season, our sales from electricity are right where they were last year. So, the residential is up considerably and some of the businesses are up, but, offsetting the losses we've had in some of the perhaps smaller business. So that's good that we are in fact selling as much electricity as we have in the past, given the current conditions. Our power costs are actually down. If we go to the bottom of the page, like I like to do, our power costs are down approximately $854,000 or 7.5%. So our sales are stable and our major cost has gone down, which is in any business is a good thing, and that holds true for us. If we go to page 2, where we look at our expenses, if we take out our change in power costs, which I just said was approximately $854,000, that still leaves a reduction of $1.5 million. And if we go to about 2/3 of the page down, employee pension and benefits, line number 926, we can see that that's down $1.1 million. And as we've had that to review is, in the past, we've brought on the full cost of the pension and the full cost of the other post-employment benefits, which turns out to be health insurance. And we're still rolling through some of the adjustment entries from one year to the next. And those adjustment entries through July of last year caused us to have $1 million worth of additional expense last year that we have for this year. So in part, in big part, that's what it's done, and accounting for the big change. If we go up 2 lines, outside services, that's $169,000. And in there, some of the outside services we use are auditing, legal, and engineering. And there's been a big decline given the conditions of our community and the state. That's been down about $163,000. So the power costs, adjustments due to pension and health insurance, and outside services that weren't being used given the current conditions account for the big change in our expenses. If we go to page number 5, which is part of the balance sheet, and if we go to the second line down, customer accounts receivable, number 142, we can see that those are up 12%, 13%. And so even though our sales are stable, we do need to be concerned that we, in fact, collect the money for those sales. So yes, they are up a little bit higher. The highest group, in fact, based on COVID, is R1, which is up 23%. We've been under the Department of Public Utilities. They've sent us a notice saying that we can't do shutoffs during this emergency, and that just seems like the right thing to do too. So they are up because we haven't been doing shutoffs and we haven't been, sending out the letters. So that's understandable. That is up, but it doesn't seem like it's to me. It doesn't seem like something that will be a major blow to us. We can handle it given our cash, the availability of the cash and the amount of cash that we have. So if we look at our cash, which is always a concern for any business, our maintenance cash and our rate stabilization cash, as we like to call it, is at $15.8 million, which is down $3.5 million from last year. And as the board may recall, last year, we made an additional payment to our pension costs to bring those costs in and be able to manage them better. So our total cash position at this point in time through July of 2020 is $18.5 million versus last year it was at $21 million. So we're down 12.5%. So I guess the thing I didn't mention is if we look at the bottom line, our income, back on page 2, we can see that at this point in time, we're profitable. As I mentioned, our cash position is very healthy, which will allow us to make it through anything that I can see coming up. We're going to be able to pay for our major product, which is the power. We won't have any issues with that. If some of our customers have difficulty paying, we should be able to maneuver through that and work through with those customers to make sure that everybody gets what is owed to them in a timely, reasonable fashion. And our receivables, although they're up, aren't really in a bad position, in my opinion. So at this point in time, we're solvent, we're profitable, our sales are stable, our receivables are a little further behind, but nothing major. So we're doing well given the current conditions. And that would be everything that I have, Mr. Chairman, unless somebody has questions.
Thank you, Peter. Excellent report. Mike, do you have any questions for Peter?
I guess the only question that I would have with this, Peter, is how many customers roughly, you might not know the exact number, but when we talk about folks who are in arrears at this point, and obviously those numbers are up, do we have an idea how many more customers in arrears are in place than we had maybe last year?
Not right off the top of my head, Mr. Landers. I could look that up. I've just got it at a highly summarized
Yep.
fashion at this point in time.
I guess not so much as a question, but I guess my one concern that I would have as we go forward, I don't know how else we can handle it, but we don't want to get into the collections business, so to speak. And my concern would be, we've got folks, we can't turn the power off, and that's great. We shouldn't be turning people's power off right now. But I would assume that shut off is a major incentive for people to eventually come in and make their payment. And that doesn't allow people to get too far behind, if that makes sense. And my concern would be that because we can't do that, we're going to have people who are now, in arrears, not just maybe a couple $100, but maybe even in the thousands of dollars for residential customers. And it's probably going to be something that we're going to have to try to address once, probably not until we get out of the winter, because we'll be hitting the winter non-shut off period pretty soon. But again, I wouldn't want to find ourselves in a position come next April where we have, 200 or 300 residential customers, all of who owe us in the thousands of dollars, well beyond what we would ever have seen before. And how do we handle that? So
Mike, this is David Lane. The way we've handled that in the past is to have the people contact us, work with Peter's staff, and we work out a payment plan with those people. So that as long as they're on a payment plan with us and they're making progress on it, we don't shut them off. If we get the numbers like we're seeing right now, and right now we don't predict we're going to be able to do any shutoffs until the shutoff season closes this winter. So we're looking at next spring as best case being able to reinstitute it. So we may have to write up a more formal policy if we're dealing with a couple hundred people, saying, if you're this, we're going to need you to sign up for this policy, just to keep, so that we make the process quicker. So Peter and I have already thought that through, and we may have to do something. And we may want this board to at least endorse with us that, yep, this is going to be the payment plan policy that we're going to put out to our customers. So we've got that on the back burner to think about for actually be next spring, well, about 9 months from now. Peter, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as far as on a percentage basis, like in years past, our receivables have been a certain percentage, and now it's so we know it went up so many percent. In that increase, can you tell it in dollars? Anything else you can put on that for us?
Well, if we look at the report, we can see that it's up $398,000, which is, that is in fact a lot of money. The residential in particular is up $230,000. So, some of the businesses categories are actually down from last year because we're not selling as much to them.
Right.
But, as both you and Mr. Landers have mentioned, we use the shut off as a last resort. We don't just line it up and say, shut off a big amount today. We want to work with the customers. We only want what we're entitled to. And we've always had, people with struggles, and we'll continue to work with those people. But at the same time, keeping the businesses, our focus in operation too. So it'll be a longer time frame than normal, but in general, that's what I think we try to do and will continue to do.
Thanks, Peter. I think that's great to hear that we anticipate, a formal policy to deal with it. And I had no doubt that we would be understanding of both the complexities of what we're dealing with on this, and also some of the personal hardships that we're going to be dealing with on it. But it's good to know that we're looking forward to it. And I think that just from a public relations standpoint, that's going to be critical, because, this is going to be probably a much more sizable portion of our residential customer base than we've ever had to deal with, or we haven't for quite a while, and we don't want to alienate that portion. So that's great. Thanks.
This is Bill. I guess the one comment I'd like to make is that was an excellent discussion in my opinion, and it was focused around residential customers. Do we anticipate, with a number of businesses going out of business all over the place, do we anticipate that we're going to have a fairly large write-off of accounts from businesses that have gone out of business? Or are we looking at, how big a risk is that to our business? Peter or David, please.
This is Peter, Mr. Chairman. At the present time, as I've mentioned, I haven't specifically run the reports for individual businesses. In general, our businesses are, the receivables are down. They're actually paying. We've had some businesses go out of business, and the reason I know that is because they've called to final their accounts out. Now, those particular businesses were at the beginning of the emergency here, and they paid us what they owed us. So right now, I'm not seeing any businesses with large outstanding balances. So I don't expect a large hit to our income by having to write things off, although there probably will be more than normal.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I have no other questions. Mike, do you have anything else?
No, sorry, I forgot that you can't see me going, no, no, no. No, I don't, thanks.
Actually, this time I can see you. I did log on with
Oh,
my
you poor
computer.
thing. You poor thing.
However, my monitor is old and has no mic or camera, so I can see you guys. I know you can't see me, and I get the audio through my phone. All right, thank you, Mike. Is there anyone on staff who has any comments? Hearing none, I have no further comments, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the DPU report that was provided in the package and is on the website.
Bill, I think we need to accept the financials, right?
Oh, thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
I had meant to say up front, if I skip by anything, please remind me. So thank you for doing that, Stephanie. Do I hear a motion to accept the financials as submitted and with the discussion?
So moved.
I second the motion. Is there any further discussion on the financials from anyone in the meeting? Hearing none, we move to a roll call vote. Mike?
Aye.
Again, Eric is not on the call. This is Bill. I also vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. And now we move on to the DPU report. Again, thank you, Stephanie, for pointing that out. DPU report, is that you, Dave? Or Clint?
So actually, the DPU report, I guess we got to say that Peter and his staff take the brunt of putting that together. And we'd like to, thank those guys, even in this, with everything going on with the offices. They buckled down and everybody had parts and pieces to put into it. But we completed it, and we do need the board to sign it. So we would hope to vote to approve it today, and then Stephanie was going to come up with a way to get around and get it to everybody to get you folks to sign that. Any other comments on the DPU report, Peter? Or
No, it's fairly straightforward. It's really just a culmination of all the financials that we've had in the meetings in 2019. Just parses the information a few different ways. So, no, again, I think we're in good shape, and that shows it.
Okay. Mike, do you have any comments or questions on the DPU filing?
No, I don't. I'll work with Stephanie to see. I can come down there, whatever's easiest for you guys to sign it when we get to that point. But I'm in favor, and I thank Peter and his staff and the entire staff for what I know is a is a pretty significant amount of work that needs to be done to put that together every year.
Okay, Bill, again, I also have no comments on the report other than to also commend Peter and his staff for doing another nice job. Incredibly thorough, incredibly detailed, and a ton of work, very obviously. With no further discussion, do I hear a motion to accept the DPU filing as submitted?
So moved.
And I will second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I move to a roll call vote. Mike?
Aye.
Again, Eric not in attendance. This is Bill. Aye. Motion to accept as submitted passes unanimously. We now move to the next item on the agenda, the PPFA, to be discussed by Clint. Clint, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Bill. So, we've been we always closely monitor what's going on with the factors that kind of impact our power supply costs and our revenues. But I think especially so throughout the summer, and I don't think anybody's really certain, how COVID was going to impact, how much we were paying for power, or how, what the revenue was really going to look like. There's some pretty scary numbers, I think, coming out of Italy back in the springtime. Fortunately for us, the natural gas market has remained low and stable, as we've discussed in previous meetings. Additionally, with the NextEra renegotiation went into effect early May, we've realized our power costs have actually come significantly down, as Peter just mentioned, going over the financials. And at this point, as of August 1st, 2020, we're about 1.4 million below the forecasted budget that was approved back in January. So with that, you can see the little graph under the power supply cost factors. It's pretty steadily below where we had forecasted, and July was really no different, south of about 200,000. So that moves on to the next component when assessing the PPFA, and that would be the power supply revenue factor. As Peter had just gone over, we have seen our commercial classes, revenue is going down, but residential and large commercial has actually gone up. And as you can see in July, under the forecast versus actual, we almost hit the forecast perfectly, which I have never seen it that close, 0.001% of forecast. So they always talk about the crystal ball. Whatever that crystal ball was in July, that thing was right on track. So with that, we are below where we forecasted we would have been pre-COVID and back, when we put the budget together at the end of last year. But again, with the power cost coming down, 1.4 million roughly from where we estimated we would be, the revenue is down about $1 million, which leaves us, 400,000 net positive from where we had anticipated being at the end of July. So if you flip over to the next page, to the big graph, you can kind of see, we had anticipated, we came in the year at about 1.2 million positive in the over-under fund. We had structured the rate such that we would be returning that over collection back to the customers throughout the year, with a goal of, landing north of 500,000 at the end of the year. You can kind of see through January through June, we were pretty much right on track. Then in June and July, revenues remained stable. Actually, kind of above where we anticipated they were going to be. The power costs were, below what we had anticipated. So if we track out our adjusted power costs through the rest of the year, and if revenue remains stable, as at this point we anticipated to really do so, we will actually, at this point, it looks like we'll be landing back around that 1.2 million mark, which again, then we'll have to do another rate assessment and see what we want to do for 2021 to get us back, landing where the policy wants to put us around the 500,000 mark, as I mentioned. So as of the end of July, we don't have the open access transmission tariff invoice collected, so we have to estimate for that. But we're right now somewhere around, 900,000 in the over-under positive, which, that's a healthy place to be. It's more, we're holding on to more than we thought we would at this point, but, given everything going on, I'd say I'd rather be on this side of it than the converse. So with that, I'd recommend we hold the current rate stable through October. For residential, would maintain the 0.05669 cents per kilowatt hour, and all of the classes would be 0.05922. And then lastly, if you look at third page, just October residential bill comparison, we are still, we're third from the bottom, but we're far from the top. So we're maintaining the rate would keep us right there. And yeah, so if we have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Clint. This is Bill. Nice report. And again, another good news report. Mike, do you have any questions for Clint?
No, I think that to even though we are, I guess, higher in terms of our quote unquote profit than we may have anticipated, and I know that there may be some sentiment that should be returned to the ratepayers. And I think in the long run, that's probably a good idea. It's certainly what we have tried to do with the rate, with the unsurety of where we're headed going forward. The fact that, quite honestly, people's bills do tend to go down as we enter into the fall. And I think the aggressive work that we talked about just recently to try to work with people who are in arrears and who are having the most difficulty, I think all those things combined lead the idea that we should definitely keep this rate at where it is. So I agree with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. This is Bill again. Clint, a couple questions, comments, kind of back on my old sawhorse where I get sometimes confused. Looking at page 1, we talked about comparing in the text to the right of the first graph, the costs have come in below budget, but then when we look at the graph, it compares forecast versus actual. And I always get confused. Are we talking about the forecast we get from E&E, or are we talking about the budget that was approved by the town?
So you were speaking about under the kilowatt hour sales and power supply revenue factors, Bill?
No. Under the power supply cost factor.
Oh, I'm sorry. The top. Okay. Yeah.
Bill, this is David. That's the power forecast put together by E&E for us.
Okay, so where the word budget is used, it's actually forecast in the text
Correct.
light of that.
Correct. Much more in depth than we put a projection together back when we do the budget way back. However, this is much more in depth, and Clint and E&E have been adjusting it through the year. And I gotta say, it's not just E&E. Clint and Jeff Ellie put a lot of time in working with E&E, updating that and changing it as we go through the year.
Okay, so the comparison really is against the forecast as we've managed it through the year, which strikes me as very sound.
Correct.
Is that okay?
Yep, that's correct.
I would suggest, if we can, try to use consistent language. At the end of the meeting, I'll tell you about a conversation I had with Eric last night on the phone. But I find personally, when we don't use consistent terminology, I get confused. And it's not setting the bar very high for you guys to confuse me, but you cleared it well above. So I commend you for that. The second question on that portion of the report, Clint, I think it was a great thing that the gas prices were negotiated down, and I'm assuming that they were being charged for a contract that we probably through E&E have negotiated, and then that was renegotiated. Could you just expound a little on how that happened, how it came about?
Sure. So Yeah, the contract that we're speaking to it was our NextEra bilateral that was structured back in 2017. That was set to, the contract term date was the end of this year, the end of December 2020. So we were looking to possibly extend that, energy only contract for another 4 or 5 years while we're picking up some of these longer term renewable contracts or carbon free contracts. And within, speaking with NextEra, they basically came up that, if we could commit to a 5-year deal, that we could take a look at the remainder of the 2020 contract, starting back in May, so about 7 months. We were locked in a little over I think it was like $42 per megawatt hour. We were able to negotiate that down to, in no small part to the low gas market, down to about $28 per megawatt hour through 2020. And then we fixed a price of around 36 for the remainder of the contract. So ultimately for 2020, that helped us realize about a $500,000 savings right off the bat. And then going forward for that 5 years, the 36 was, our average portfolio cost right now is about $48 for a bilateral. So 36 was, that was a good deal that we wanted to grab onto. And we structured it in such a way that it still allows us the room that we need to bring on some of our carbon-free and renewable longer-term contracts.
So, Bill, the other thing, when Clint did that, and obviously that was part of the negotiations on that contract, was one option that they put in, and Clint and his staff ran the financial analysis on getting that money up front, that discount up front, and they ran it over the term of the contract. And it turned out to be that was the most beneficial over the life of the contract, was to get that low rate now. It was worth a lot to us because obviously it's present day money. And also, especially when they did the contract with the uncertainty right now, gave us the best chance to be able to keep the power cost low and perhaps even be able to look at reducing the PPFA come December.
Thank you, Dave. Again, this is Bill. Thank you, Dave. That is a very insightful comment. So we did this pretty much on our own without E&E. Is that correct?
No. They were part of the process. We keep them on as an advisor through the whole process, and they represent us, not the power company. They'll work with us on any power company that we want to do a deal with. We also had our attorney, Chris Pollard, who's our power supply attorney. He helped us through the process. It was a team event.
Wow, it sounds like a great team event and a really good job. I don't know if I asked at the last meeting, but the concern I had was we've taken advantage of a change in the market to get a savings. By setting that precedent, are we incurring a risk that in the future, if the gas prices go up, that NextEra would come back to us for an increase in spite of the existing contract?
Well, this contract is set. In this contract, in this 5-year period, we're locked in at certain increases, certain rates, so we're okay. If it's not like a variable rate contract.
Okay, again, it's Bill. Thank you, David and Clint. It sounds like a great job and took advantage of the market and apparently with little to no risk of seeing an escalation in the future. So great job. My next question then, Clint, is down on the first half or the second half with the 2 graphs down below. Again, it's just my thing about terminology. I get confused. Within the text, right under that heading of power supply revenue factors, we talk about forecast to actual deviation of 1.2%, but then in the next line, we talk about kilowatt sales are down 6.2%. Are we talking, like, for example, the way I kind of read it is sales is in terms of kilowatt hours and revenue is in terms of dollars. Is that a correct interpretation on my part?
Yes, Bill, that is correct.
Okay. Might I suggest for the future that kilowatt sales is pretty clear, but maybe talk about revenue dollars just add that one symbol in there, and it might make it clearer going forward to anybody who's looking at it. Okay. And then on page 3, I had a question where we have the graph of our cost versus the other towns and then the 2 major utilities, investor-owned utilities. We historically, in my relatively short time on the board, had been in number 2, and Middleton has now come in below us. And my question just is, I know we have good working relationships with both Peabody and Middleton. Is there anything we can learn from them as to how they were able to lower their rates? I think we've done a very good job of keeping our rate low, but these guys actually slipped below us. We know Peabody has historically been the low-cost provider, and we were second. Is there anything we can learn from these 2 other utilities that we work very closely in order to help reduce our rates further? Clint or David?
Bill, that question has come up a lot, especially with Peabody, because Peabody's always been so much lower than us. So we've really taken a look at Peabody, and obviously we can't, all the terms of some of their power deals are confidential. However, we can actually meet with them and look at their portfolio. They do have some old power contracts that put them in a better position than us. I'm talking ones that were done a decade ago. Also, Peabody has the ability to generate some power. That keeps it low. They're able to do that, which we don't have that piece. In Middleton, it's as simple of that, again, they have a few older contracts that are able to keep their power costs slightly lower than ours. Clint, anything else you can add on Peabody Middleton, that just those power contracts, correct, that they have that we can't, from years ago?
Right, the legacy contracts.
Legacy contracts, we call them, Bill. We can't catch those.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the initiative in seeking to see if there was anything we might be able to leverage for ourselves. Mike, do you have any other questions for Clint or Dave?
No, I'm good with that. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Does anyone on the meeting have any further comments before we move to a motion? Hearing no comments, I'll accept the motion to accept the PPF recommendation as submitted.
So moved.
This is Bill. I second the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's move to a roll call vote. Mike?
Aye.
This is Bill. Aye. The motion passes unanimously as submitted. Next on the agenda is the engineering report, but there were a couple of items submitted in our packages for the meeting from Clint. Clint, would you like to discuss those now before we move to the engineering report? Those include the historic tangent temperature gas and our environmental portfolio summary.
So, Bill, I can start. Clint looks like he's are you ready, Clint? Or
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
So in your packets, and I was going to bring them up under my report. So Clint and his staff first put together the portfolio summary, which shows just how much power we have in the renewables, how much we have that is carbon free, and those pie charts. It shows us how much nuclear power we really have. It's 45% of our portfolio, and that's what we have the long time, as Clint calls them now, legacy contracts with Seabrook. However, we have continued to add in the hydro, the solar, and from the graphs that you see on the back pages, we're above the thresholds that we need to be at right now with the current legislation, and we're on our way to be in good shape, heading towards the 2030, 2040, and 2050 goals. We still have a ways to go. However, what we plan to do is continue the business strategy of taking advantage of renewable contracts when they're cost effective going forward. Right now, we're pretty leveraged out. We don't have a lot of room to add contracts in the current year. However, 2 years from now, we do have a little bit of room in our portfolio. And so 2 to 3 years, and we're looking for options right now that'll kick in the later 2020s with renewables. We're monitoring those right now to see and slowly replace the natural gas contracts with those renewables.
Sounds good. Mike, do you have any questions for David or Clint?
No, I think it looks like we're moving in the right direction. I mean, I don't think anybody would be is not all that thrilled with the fact that our nuclear amount is not necessarily going down, but I think when you look at the addition of the biomass, Palmer biomass, which I think was a great purchase on our part, and the expansion on solar and then a minor expansion on hydro, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction, and we should be applauded for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The second memo, oh, Bill, did you have any more comments on it? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was going to make a comment or two. Thank you, David. I, too, would like to applaud the team for the forward-thinking and forward-looking here. On page 1, I had a question comparing the first graph to the second graph. The spot market power is currently at 3% in the 2020 graph, the first of the two. On the 2024 graph, the second of the two, the spot market power goes up to 12%. I think in the past, haven't we used a rough guideline of a max of 10%? And so I would question, why do we have the 12% target at this point, or is that a flexibility issue? And either, Clint, Dave, feel free to, whichever one of you has the answer, please feel free.
Sure, Bill. So that's actually a recommendation. Working with our chief portfolio strategist at E&E, they recommend right now. There's a lot of renewable and carbon-free contracts that they think are going to be coming to the table in the next 2 or 3 years. So they wanted us to remain in a flexible position in order to take advantage of those, but stay close enough to our 10% kind of benchmark that we try to adhere to.
So we're trying to leave a little bit of a buffer there, Bill, so we could grab at one of the good contracts.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I suspected that might be the cause, but I just wanted to clarify it. So thank you for that. And I would like to comment also, we're currently at carbon-free is 55%, and we're looking out 4 years and we're at 73%. I think that's great progress. And the team, Clint and the team, are to be recommended for that. On the next page, just looking at the bottom graph of the two, which is a graph against a potentially future requirement. We're well below that one, which is, of course, very, very aggressive. So my question would be, should we be addressing that? And, I think nuclear power meets that requirement, and I've occasionally read about a potential increase in nuclear power in the future using so-called, I think they were called modularized nuclear power plant designs, which would be small nuclear power plants, basically with one design and cookie cutter kind of dropped in wherever appropriate, so that some of the concerns about the uniqueness of each plant and the size of each plant would be somewhat mitigated. So it's really a two-part question on this bottom graph. Should we be addressing this in some way ahead? And then second, just for education, what is the future of nuclear we're aware of? Clint or Dave?
Yeah, so right now I know Massachusetts is going through legislation with, do you want to say NERC, the Nuclear Regulatory, the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I think that Seabrook and a couple of the other plans are approved at the 2030, I believe, and they know that they're pushing to get them clear to 2050 for operations. So from this point in time, we anticipate that our nuclear contracts will remain viable and will be there for us for the future. And I have not heard about I haven't heard about the new, any new, like, mini, what did you call them, Bill? The smaller nukes?
I think they're called modular. It's been a while since I read that article. But I haven't heard anything more, so I don't think they're taking off.
So, Bill, the idea of the mini nukes has come up in the, when we've gone to our power supply summits and they're trying to look in the giant crystal ball. We haven't seen any movement on that over the last 6-8 months at all. And the environmentalists just come out so strongly against any more nuclears. They're really having a tough uphill climb. As far as looking at Seabrook, it's a little bit unnerving that we have 45% of our portfolio counts on Seabrook and Millstone, those guys being operational. We were pleased that their relicensing went well. So we're not at a point where we need to pull the emergency cord and have a backup. And we get reports from them monthly, and we'll just have to keep monitoring that and see if all of a sudden they come up with issues that say that something is going wrong there. We'll have to take other action. Some of our nuclear contracts do have emergency factors or other solutions in it, but the majority does not. If Seabrook goes down, we'll be scrambling for other power.
Okay, thank you, David. Sounds like you're on top of it. Is there anything you think we should be doing? Or do you think what emergency clauses are there are enough and that we could scramble to recover if either plant were to go down?
I think we need to continue to keep making sure that we're reading the reports from Seabrook, that they keep providing that to us, so we keep watching it and we're aware of any issue that they have is very quickly and as soon in the process. We just don't want to be caught by surprise. To have any kind of insurance policy or backup plan in effect right now, the cost would be astronomical, and we just couldn't afford it.
Okay, thank you, David. Stephanie, does receipt of Clint's analysis here require a motion to approve?
I don't believe that requires it. This is just an advisory memo to the board.
Okay, thank you, David. All right, do we want to move then on to Clint's analysis of the tangent temporary gas generator performance?
Sure. Before Clint talks about his numbers, I just wanted to have one factor that actually precedes Clint. And I'm not sure if Michael may not be aware. When we started the idea of peak reduction, we knew the costs were going to ramp up. They were going to get higher. The savings, were going to get higher and then go down. The bell curve on that was predicted. And so about 5-6 years ago, it's one reason why we kind of had to get into action quick and get the temporary generator. We needed to grab those savings while, as we say, the getting was good. Because we knew it was going to go away. And all of the out there on the ISO network and with the Nerc requirements, FERC requirements, they're trying to get rid of this. They still don't even like the idea that we have solar essentially behind the master meter. We have it on our own little system. They would like that to be constituted as part of the whole big grid. So that's a lot of legislative work is going on with that. But I just wanted to set the tone that right now we knew that these costs, this was going to go down, how much we could save in capacity and transmission. It's market driven. And also in the past couple of years, we also needed to be cognizant, and we're watching it closely, that we knew it was going to get harder to get the savings. We're going to spend more to get the same savings. So I just want to have that intro. Clinton, you can take it away from there.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. So yeah, just really going back to the first year, we kind of entered disagreement when Tangent was a successful low bid. As you can just, I mean, the numbers really just speak for themselves. So in 2017, we were looking at, over $400,000 in offset capacity savings, close to 100 in transmission savings, and avoided energy costs are marginal, but you're looking at an ROI of, 176%. So, that's a pretty solid investment, and and the capacity peak there's a high level of confidence that you're going to hit the capacity peak. The transmission peaks are a little trickier to pin down. So as the years have sort of, stepping from 2017 to 18, capacity savings were still there. Transmission savings went up. However, the cost of the generator also went up that year. 2019, if you look, that's with the first year when the capacity savings actually started to come down, which is going to be for the next, 3 years. The capacity savings are going to continue to decline. So they took a big hit, to the tune of about $100,000 in 2019. Transmission savings were similar to 18. However, as I mentioned in the memo, we did not successfully capture the September peak. So that, we lost about $27,000 in savings because of that. And then if you look at the program costs went up pretty dramatically, close to 25-30% from previous years, bringing the ROI down to, just over 50%. We looked at 2020, we put the bid together. Mark and I and the team got all the technical stuff ready. We put the bid out. That was right when COVID was kind of happening. So I don't know if that had an impact on people submitting or not, but we only received one proposal. That was from Tangent again, with fuel costs and our internal administrative costs, because we have to have, tech services. We have to have a crew available every time we run this thing. All the engineering and all the legwork. The costs were coming close to $300,000 if we wanted to proceed this year. It basically just met the capacity savings. So assuming that we hit the system peak for the year, the program would be a wash. And then we relying on successfully going after the monthly transmission peaks. And as we've seen, we didn't really know, especially back in April, how our load curve was going to be affected with COVID. So there were predictions. We were working with E&E that they predicted that our peak was going to go from, being 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon because of the loss of businesses and people being home. They actually predicted it could be shifted all the way towards like noontime, meaning that when we run this generator, we really are kind of hitting a moving target that we didn't really, know how to go after. And even so, with that said, every time if we potentially would, not capture that transmission peak for whatever reason, that would, cost the saving, basically bring the savings back down, over $30,000 for every month that we missed that. So we had, the internal meeting with Dave and the team, and we basically said at this point, and with everything going on, also with the remote working and dealing with the COVID and the impact and keeping operations going, that this was not really an optimal year to proceed with the program.
Oh, thank you, Clint. That is an excellent clarifying report. Mike, do you have any questions for Clint?
Nope, that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Clint.
Clint, this is Bill again. Again, thank you for doing the analysis and a really excellent and detailed explanation of it. I have to admit, when I saw this, I saw 46% return on investment, and I look at, okay, we invest $300,000 for about maybe a maximum of 6 months, and we save 46% of that. That's pretty tough to turn down. If I were to look at doing that in the stock market, I'd be a hero. Did an excellent job of explaining the risk environment. And that kind of answers my question of, how could we turn down 46% return over, say, 6 months of investment? So very good analysis, excellent reporting and clarifying the environment that you were having to do this in, and I fully understand. Stephanie, I'm assuming this also would not require a motion. Is that correct?
Correct.
Maybe Stephanie's not there. Okay, I don't believe this requires a motion, so let's move on to the engineering report, the next item on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Bill. Just a couple areas to update. So with regards to the Danversport substation, how I mentioned we had a partially collapsed ducts and for the getaways, and we actually wanted to make sure that we could get on that right away. It did go out to bid. We did receive the bids, and we actually put out a letter of recommendation for an award to award that bid to Matuccio Construction. So that has been completed. We have created a requisition to roll with that. The one thing we're waiting on now is the notice to proceed, as well as the purchase order. So we're looking to start sometime in October. So I'm really excited to get that done. Also, with regards to that, the good thing with that is the Danversport substation, when we did the primary disconnects over back in 2010, it was noted that the substation was in excellent shape. I mean, this is a substation from the 60s. Exterior-wise, it doesn't look great, but internally, they say it's basically like one of those like 57 Chevys in a sense where, you know, they don't build them like that anymore. So with regards to that, since the substation is in such great shape, it's one of those stations we're going to plan to keep for the future. We are going to look at investing some money in painting the transformers. We're going to repaint the whole switchgear as well. So we're actually in the process of taking out the station to redo the underground getaway duct bank. We're going to have another company coming in, you know, coordinate so we can make sure that we can kind of kill two birds with one stone. So that's something that we've looked at doing as well to make sure that this station is up to par and up to snuff for years to come. Because obviously any signs of rust or anything like that, we want to make sure that we take care of that right away so we don't have any issues heading into the future. With regards to the Northland Substation.
Mark, please, before you leave that.
Yep.
I'm not sure I fully understood. We're really doing two things there. We're repairing this collapsed duct bank, and then we're refurbishing, let's say, the weatherization of the substation. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. We're going to look to kill two birds with one stone, in a sense. Correct. Because we've noticed that there's been some, I guess, like you said, some wearing on some of the equipment from the elements out there with regards to the station. And I can actually show you, I could provide you with a picture of some sort just to show you what it looks like. But the exterior of the metal-clad station has a lot of wear and tear with regards to the weather, as well as the transformers have shown some signs of rust. So what they're going to do is we're going to have a company come in, they can prep that, and then they can actually, you know, they'll paint it accordingly to the standards as well as the switchgear. Because what's going to happen is we need to take the station and de-energize the whole station in order to redo the duct bank. And if we were going to if we were going to paint the station as well as the transformers, we'd have to do the same thing. So now we're going to try to make sure we can coordinate both things at the same time. So then that way we'll be in great shape. And obviously with regards to the station too, we're sort of at a limited window on when we can take the station out, and the fall is really primarily the best time to do it. So you are correct in the event that there are two separate things that we're looking to do with regards to that station.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thanks. I hope that answers. With regards to the Northland Substation, I spoke about how we were working on the easement, and I spoke about how we actually had a an easement draft in place. At this point in time, we are now working with Hancock Engineering to put a formal plot plan together that shows meets and bounds. So that is moving along as well. Once we get that plot plan, we can actually just finalize the draft and as well as the restoration agreement, and then hopefully get things rolling to proceed with that station, which has been, we've been looking to do that for quite some time. So I'm glad to see we're making some headway with that. I expect something from probably Hancock within the next couple of weeks. And then we can, again, just continue to move along and get the easement and the restoration agreement situated. With regards to our Nerc audit, I mentioned that everything.
Mark,
yep.
Mark, before you leave that one, you had mentioned last time that the ball was asking us to repair the parking lot as part of the deal. Is that where's that gone?
Yes, that's going to be part of the restoration agreement. So we're going to have the plot plan with the meets and bounds. We're going to have an easement, and we're actually going to have a restoration agreement that shows that basically we are going to restore a portion of the parking lot which we're going to use for our easement. So basically, if you're looking at that spillover lot in the back next to our existing substation, there's a lot of vegetated area to the left of it. And what we'd be looking to do, and that's owned by Liberty Tree, we'd be looking to basically use that vegetated area to rebuild the portion of the parking lot which we would be taking. Because we're looking to take a chunk of land that's kind of right next to our existing substation, which takes a portion of their the spillover parking lot.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Is that a big cost to us
I'm sorry?
to restore that? Is that a big cost to us to restore it, or is it just something we have to do anyway?
It's something that it's part of sort of the negotiation in a sense with working with them, as far as they weren't looking for any money from us with regards to obtaining an easement, and all they asked in return was that we rebuild whatever parking area that we take from them. So it's in the grand scheme of things, I think we've made out pretty well on the situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep. With regards to the Nerc audit, I mentioned at that point in time last meeting that we didn't have any areas concerns at the moment. I'm happy to report that the Nerc audit is completed and that there's 0 areas of concern. So that is done. Happy to say we've gotten through that. That was 6-year ordeal as far as a cycle that went through. With regards to our standards now, so we've wrapped up the standards. So we received our last set of standards from Lados with regards, TRC. We received our last set this past week. So we're now just vetting through those, making sure everything's all situated. And the expectation is that we're going to look to roll that out to the employees in a formal manner sometime next month. So that has been a big endeavor that, the team, the engineering team in the back has been working on, helping draft up what we want to have out there for particular standards to make sure that we can formalize and have a set rule out there so the guys will have guidance when they go out there and rebuild pole lines and they do any maintenance of any of that nature or capital. So it's been a long time coming, and it's been a huge endeavor that the engineering team out the back has been working on, and we're just about there right now, so I'm happy to report that. And,
Mark, before you leave that, could you just briefly explain what these standards are? So
the standards are basically what they do is they tell us they basically abide by the NESC, the National Electrical Safety Code, and it tells us about clearances and how we want to build things on the pole line. So in the event that, for instance, we just say, we want to extend this pole line, 3 separate poles, what's going to happen is, one headline may go down there and want to build the construction on the pole separate from another guy. And what this does is it basically standardizes what we want to do out there. We sit there and say that, we want certain type of equipment on a pole at a certain specific height on a pole based on the footage of the pole. It specifies we need a certain amount of clearances from the communication. There's got to be like 40 inches of clearance from communication. So it specifies all these things. So when a lineman or tech service personnel, they're out in the field, what they can do is they can reference these standards. And what it is, it's basically a sheet that actually shows a picture view of the pole line and how to build it. They actually tell you what equipment is needed, what, from the nuts and bolts to the height that every piece of equipment should be on the pole. And it specifies, because as I've stated in the past, we are partial owners of the pole with Verizon. And then we actually have third-party attachments on the pole. So what this does now is it gives the allotted space saying, Danvers Electric has X amount of feet on the top of the pole, and within that zone, we can put, this circuit at this level, this next circuit at this level, our secondary at this level, and making sure that we have adequate clearances. Because we want to make sure that we don't build things to a non-standard, because that'll just, cause more issues in the long run. And it's good to have things standardized, and just from every single standpoint, it can help us from an inventory standpoint too. If we can standardize things and say, this is the exact piece of tool, equipment we want to use, that'll help us from an inventory standpoint, as well as making sure that we have the best, safe, efficient construction out in the field.
Thank you, Mark. This is Bill again. Mike, do you have any questions for Mark on that? This effort strikes me as very significant, addressing a couple of things that we've heard in the past about our inventory control. I know safety standards are always important, and if we can come up with a job package when we send a crew out that gives them, here's what you do, here's how you do it, here's what you need, seems to me that would help us control our costs. Everything needed for the job would go out with the job on the first time. They wouldn't have to come back for anything. Strikes me as a great effort. Mike, do you have any comments, questions on that?
Nope, I agree entirely.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Mark, I'm glad to hear this is coming along so well. I think it's a very positive step. And I think it was really good insight on the team's part to go after this effort. And I'm glad to see it coming to, fruition. So thank you. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Please continue your report.
Appreciate it. And that was basically the last really update I had. Again, I mean, the only other thing I can state is that Water Street now, we're kind of ramping back up on that one completely now because the staffing level has been back to full force in a sense over the last 2 weeks. However, we are battling some injuries with some individuals, but we are looking to, again, jump back on these larger projects that kind of came, not to a screeching halt, but did have to come to a slowdown in a sense. So again, the Water Street job, that's going back on. And now that we're starting to get back to full force in a sense, we're going to start tackling some of these other projects that we've been looking to continue with. But that's really all I have as far as updates at the moment. But if any other questions, by all means, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mark. Mike, do you have any questions?
Nope, thank you, Mark. Great report.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, this is Bill again. Just one question. Last month you mentioned we were getting started on the process of designer selection for the substation at 42, I believe, control house. Any progress on that?
No, so what I was saying was we were in the process of doing that, but what happened was we kind of had to jump over to the Danversport substation project, more so because that was more of a pertinent project at the point that really was something that we weren't expecting. And just during the process of reconducting some of the underground is when we sort of stumbled upon that. Looking, inside one of the manholes, and that's when it was discovered that the duct bank was partially collapsed. So that's when we had to really make sure that we focus more efforts on the Danversport one. However, we are starting, now that this is, pretty much situated and we can get rolling with it with, Matuccio, hopefully sometime next month, we can really start trying to focus on getting, moving the process forward with the control house, because I know that's a very important aspect as well. So we are at that stage, and we are going to begin to really start moving on that one as well again.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned injuries. Anything serious, or are the guys basically okay?
Bill, that's really something that we don't want to, obviously things are okay. This is personal things with the employees that we wouldn't want to discuss.
Yeah, exactly. Just, nothing critical, just exactly.
Yeah, that's fully in the charter. Personnel items are not discussed in this meeting. I apologize for bringing it up.
Yeah, on my behalf as well, too. I just, sometimes it's hard to explain why certain things aren't in a particular position where you want them to be, but unfortunately, when you're battling certain elements, in a sense, it's hard to get things to progress the way you really want them to be, so.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Do we need a motion on this?
No, we don't. This is advisory to the board.
Okay, thank you. Then the next item, Dave, is you on utility director report update.
So, a couple key things that we wanted to touch on, Mark did. So we were pleased to get all of the line staff and tech services staff back on September 8th on their the full rotation, get off the AB thing, base shift. So that was good. Kudos to Clint, Mark, and Anthony, who's all played a big role in coming up with a safety plan so that the guys come back, they're able to stay isolated, they have the right personal protective gear. So we're being very cautious to keep our staff as safe as possible. And those three guys did a really good job putting everything in place. And now it's up to the guys to follow the policies. We have a whole COVID policy, what's supposed to happen, work policies, where you're supposed to be, And now we just need to take it seriously and follow that. Here at work, you can have your own beliefs or opinions on COVID and what's safe and what's not. However, if you're going to work here, these are the policies that you're going to follow, and those are in place, and we mean it. Just this past Monday, the 21st, we were able to bring back the office staff in engineering, bring them back and get them off the AB shift. Same thing with the civil engineering staff. We've done that in my office up here at Town Hall. And then next Monday, we'll be bringing back the rest of the business office over in Peters. So Peters looking forward to that, getting things close to normal. At this time, we do not plan to open offices to the public until at least October 5th. The town manager is reviewing that. But I can tell the board that Clint, Mark, Peter, all the staff, all Peter's staff has gone out of the way to provide all of our customer service aspects that we did before COVID. We're finding a way to do it. And I guess we're trying to make a point to provide good customer service. When we can do it, we're finding we can do it without people coming into the office, into Peter's office and doing that. So in October, we're working as staffs right now. What are we going to do about having the public come in? Do we really need the public to come in? Is that safe? And working through that. But the town manager is anticipating opening up town offices to the public in October. How that's going to be, I'm not sure. It's probably not going to be the same as it definitely will not be the same as it was before COVID. Any questions from the board on the COVID opening and those things? Did you guys have any questions on that?
Mike?
No, thank you very much. Good information.
Bill, I don't have any comments or questions either. Good report. Thank you.
Two very exciting personnel announcements. So we know Jeff King retired. We had a number of our headline workers apply for and go through the interview process for the to replace Jeff as our line distribution supervisor. Not an easy decision. We had a lot of good candidates. We have some really talented individuals working for us in the line group. Brian Cole was selected to be the new distribution service. So he's had a couple of weeks working. So he, right away, he's in the AB shift. He's got to get, he's working with the staff to get everybody back. We're excited to have Brian take off. He's dedicated to the town and dedicated to Danvers Electric, very talented. And so we have Brian in place as the new distribution supervisor. The other big news is that we have awarded the new position of assistant business manager to Peter Kapusik, to Angelica, how do I say it, Pete? Medina, I'm sorry. I wrote it wrong on my paper. Angelica Medina. Angelica is currently working as the business manager up in Salisbury DPW. She has a good experience with the water and sewer business side and dealing with customers. We're hoping that can translate over into the electric side as well. Very dedicated, hardworking person that really just rose above a lot of the candidates. We did have a couple in-house people that applied for the job. We liked them and worked with them. We want to work with them to continue their future. Just felt like Angelica at this time was the best person for the new position. And so we're excited to have her on in the second week in October. We'll get her to start. So Peter's putting together a plan, and I think he's excited about her coming. Anything you want to say about that, Peter, or did that do it?
David, that was great. Just looking forward to getting going and moving forward. She seems very excited to start, and I'm excited to have her, as everybody else is. Great.
Thank you, Peter. On the cost of service study, we have received that report. We've mentioned it briefly before. We are in the process of setting up a staff meeting to do a final review of their recommendations and their numbers to make sure we're all on the same platform and in the same place. And then we'll start to work on designing a presentation to the board. hopefully we can present something on the cost of service study at the next meeting. No promises right now, but that's the goal I've set out. We'll see. That's what we'd like to do. And obviously the base rate information that Stephanie put together. Thank you, Stephanie, that we sent around. That is part of the information, the little piece that we're starting to gather to hand out to the board, because we know the cost of service study is going to have a base rate component to it. So at this time, I don't think we really need to talk too much about base rates, other than we do see that a lot of the other municipal entities around here do have a customer charge or a base rate.
David, I did not include that in the packs. I just put that in for
Oh.
you only. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
board members, I apologize. So right after the meeting, we'll send you guys an email where Stephanie has quickly gone out and shown that Ipswich, Marblehead, Middleton, Peabody, Reading, Wakefield all have customer charges that range from $4 to $6. Oh, I'm sorry, Peabody doesn't have one. They're a 0. But the other ones, Ipswich, Marblehead, Middleton, Reading, Wakefield. So it seems that the company doing our cost of service study is correct. The norm out there is to have a base customer charge. So we're gonna have to we're gonna recommend talking about that through that with the cost of service study. So more to come on that hopefully at the next meeting. And then with the cost of service study comes the financial management software package that Clint and Peter have just gotten together to look at. We still need to finalize the process to pick a firm. They just did another interview with a firm on that, and are getting closer to being able to pick a firm that we can use for our financial management software system with the inventory control. So it's still in progress. The other big program, oh, wait 1 second. We just did get our second electric vehicle. We had the Volt, and now we have just got a Mitsubishi electric plug-in vehicle that replaced one of the engineering division's SUVs. That we've just put into service this week. So that'll be our second truly electric plug-in vehicle in the electric division. The residential electric meter replacement program, we just had ramped it up, getting into full speed, and then COVID hit, and was one of the things we had to stop when we did the whole division of our staff into the AB shifts. We started to put together a plan on how we can get that program going again this fall. And now, as we met with staff, myself, Clint, and Peter, we thought we had a plan to do it. And I think Clint brought it up the most, is that we need to be concerned about all of these students that are home doing their virtual learning. So when we replace someone's meter, it's going to be an outage when we pull that meter out and put the new meter in. So essentially, we're going to have to tell the people, hey, you need to shut your computers down. We're going to pull the meter, then we're going to pull it back in, then they fire up their computers. So we're thinking through, is that going to be too much of an impact on our customers right now? Our parents who have multiple children at home doing virtual learning, and suddenly they get a power outage in the morning because we're doing a meter, which a meter replacement, should we be doing it? So right now we're thinking that through. I guess I'd take comments from the board, or if you guys have comments on that, shoot me an email. Should we do that and go around? And it's definitely going to add a whole complexity to the system, because we feel like there's so many more people at home doing their business thing. So any comments from the board members on that thought? It's kind of dampening or letting the air out of our balloon on this plan we had in place.
Mike, do you have any questions or comments on that?
I mean, I think that under the circumstances, it probably would make some sense to delay that till, I'm assuming it's also not necessarily something that we want to be doing in the winter, the deep, dark cold of snowy winter. So based on that, I would probably say that would make some sense to delay it until March or April of next year. I don't know what that does in terms of the, internally, how we're going to deal with that, either financially or with our, what we've got planned for staff utilization. But yeah, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking exactly what you said, that it isn't just the student population either. I think that we probably would find that a significantly larger portion of our overall population is working from home, and the idea of shutting people down for some period during business hours would cause a tremendous amount of pushback from those folks. Probably not worth it.
Dave, this is Bill. I guess I have two questions. Roughly how long are we talking about? And also that, of course, would be a planned outage that we may be able to communicate and schedule with then added work on logistics, versus what would be the risk of a unplanned outage were the meter to fail. How risky is that? Dave?
So as far as, I'll start at the bottom. As far as a risk of, would there be a longer than the 10 to 20 minute outage, which is a max for just a meter replacement. When we get to the site, we can look at the meter socket and make a visual observation if it's in good shape or not. We can set a policy that if one of the meter techs gets to a socket and it looks like it's rusted or in poor condition, where it might fall apart when we pull the meter out, we could not do it. We can instruct the meter techs to say, don't pull that one out, call that into tech services and have it looked at. So if we did that, that would really cut down the risk of a long outage that might happen. So then that puts us back to what we would tell people is you need to expect to be out for, 10, we'd probably say 10 to 20 minutes, even though we know that's at the outset. That's worst case scenario. Guys should be able to replace the meter quicker than that. So we did talk through, the process. We'd have to have, we would bang on the door, say, hey, we're going to be doing that. If they answer the door, we're going to let them know. But then, so the process would probably be, we'd have to bang on the door, give them the chance to shut their computers down. Then we'd have to replace the meter. Then, and then they would see the power come back on. So, but we'd have to be a lot more thorough on that, I think, than we would have been under normal conditions where most of the people aren't even home.
Thank you, David. It seems to me like there would be a lot more management and logistics involved than if it were just a straight replacement program. So I guess by asking the questions, I've fulfilled my responsibility. I will leave it up to you guys to figure out, at least in my opinion, what's the best way to go forward. I trust you guys with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and we'll continue to do that. And I do want to tell the board that the problem, we're getting 10 to 15 meters failing a week. That's still happening. That's why we have to do the meter replacement. Those, we're still having crews go out and do those. So with those people where we can't get meter readings from, we'll talk to the people we need. Unfortunately, they need to do an outage. We need to have a meter there recording the data. So we're doing those 10 to 15. At a minimum, we'll keep doing that.
Thank you, David.
The last thing, in a kind of a transition into the board's comments, is we did get the memo from Steve Bartha, dated August 31st. Stephanie, that memo went out to the board, correct? The pilot memo?
Yes.
Yeah, we have.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Now I'm gun shy. I want to make sure. So we had to wait for it, but the town manager did do a thorough review. I know this can maybe segue into a initial conversation about the pilot. Bill did send an email with a couple some thoughts on it. Bill, just to start out, and I'll let you take it from here, but the one question you brought up was the tried and true why, we do the calendar year budget versus a fiscal year budget. And right now, I just wanted to speak to that before we get into too much of a discussion about it. The FERC regulatory requirements require us to do a calendar year budget. So you see in the DPU report, we report a calendar year budget in the DPU report. Even if locally we went to a fiscal year budget, we would still have to do the DPU report on a calendar year basis. So the auditors would still be reviewing our DPU report, which means the auditors would be reviewing our calendar year budget. So if we were to do a fiscal year budget, it would have to be a second budget process on top of the calendar year budget, and it wouldn't be the one that the finances of Danvers Electric are based on. The audited budget would be the calendar year budget. So essentially, it would be for display purposes only, or for something like that. So, and it would be a large undertaking because we'd have to put a whole nother budget platform. We'd have to have 2 budget books, manage 2 budgets to do that. So that's the primary reason why we haven't gone to the fiscal year budget, and we've been asked to do it by many finance committees, by some boards of selectmen, because I know on the town side, they would like to see us on a fiscal year budget. However, our answer has always been, we continue to say, yeah, we could do it. However, it would just be for presentation purposes only, and it'd be a large endeavor.
David, could I just ask one question before you leave that?
Sure.
Looking at the DPU report, I don't see that it compares the results against the budget. It just says, here's the results. Would we have to do a budget on the calendar year? If that's the only reason, I'd say, take another look at it. Is it really necessary to construct a calendar year budget simply for the DPU, or are there other reasons? You don't have to answer now. Just think about it.
Yeah, it's in the DPU report, and as all of our FERC regulatory budget, we have to file all of our power budgets, the power costs, sales, all of those numbers have to be reported on a calendar year basis.
Oh, okay. So it's really FERC versus the DPU. The DPU is kind of secondary.
Yeah, it's both. Yep.
Okay. Fine.
And then the only other I did want to talk. And Bill compared the pilot to water and sewer. I just had a couple quick comments to start that out. The Sewer Enterprise Fund is our newest enterprise fund. The town only adopted that, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago. They had never worked in an enterprise basis with sewer. They collected money, kept it on the books separate. However, it wasn't true enterprise where it needed to fund itself. It did fund itself, but it wasn't on the books. 7 or 8 years ago, that's when that was changed. Both water and sewer, they do not generate any profit per se. Any unspent money at the end of the year goes into their retained earnings, which is a bank account, and the town has set a policy on where the retained earnings should be. They don't want it to grow too big, don't want it to be too small. I believe it's 10% of revenues is where we've set the policy, and that's working with the town accountants. So those 2 accounts work with a bank account and a policy on where that bank account should be at the end of the year. I know I'm simplifying that dramatically, but it's a quick description of it. So the pilots have been modest, I would say, compared to on the electric side from water and sewer, and that's a real town decision on that. And the real reason for that is that because of the need, the capital improvements that have been needed, and what those do to the budget and the water and sewer side. We've had to build a water treatment plant and pay for that, water main replacements, sewer main replacements. The capital expenditures have been significant. On the electric side, when I've met with the town manager and talked about pilot, I think Bill may have carved out the operating part to compare operating costs of the electric with the operating costs of water and sewer, and left out the power supply costs. I don't believe we can do that. As far as how the town manager looks at it and how the town looks at it, the town of Danvers is liable for the full $45 million of Danvers Electric every year. It's that liability that the town has to back up. And so when the town itself is looking at being compensated as a pilot, the town needs to look at Danvers Electric as a whole. If Danvers Electric something went wrong with everything, the town, the taxpayers would be on the hook for all of those power supply costs, not just the operating costs. I'm just passing along the message that I've heard both from the town manager and from the finance committee of the town. That's the liability, and thus that's why they look at the pilot. I think the other thing is, as far as the town as a whole, and most towns look at municipal electrics at a way that the laws are set up that we can make a modest profit on Danvers Electric, and that's a way to assist the town. Pilots do help the town, they help the tax rate, and it's one of the benefits of having a municipal electric company, that you can augment taxes with a pilot. And I think even though with Danvers Electric, we're very conservative in this town, we didn't increase the pilot for a long, long time. In looking at that and looking at the pressure on taxes right now, there's an option to increase the pilot, and also the percentage of our income that the pilot's proposed is still a fraction of what could be done and what is done in some other communities that have municipal electrics. They take the pilot right up to the 9%, right up to the maximum. So I just wanted to hit those high points kind of to kick off a discussion on the pilot memo. And Bill, you may want to take it from here.
Thank you, Dave. I guess what I'd like to say is, one, thank you to you and the town manager and the finance committee for really putting some effort into responding to that. I think as a volunteer board, it's incumbent upon to ask questions and to do a certain amount of work to look at it and say, is this a good decision for the town? And particularly where we represent the ratepayers of the utility, we should be asking these kinds of questions. I didn't think I was getting good answers in the prior meetings. I think these answers are very thorough. So if I did nothing more than stimulate that, I think I've achieved what I set out to achieve. I feel like I have a better understanding now. I never questioned whether or not it was legal for the town to increase our pilot payment, but I wanted to have a better understanding of what was behind it and why, and is this a reasonable increase in our pilot payment? And I think you've addressed those concerns. Mike, do you have any comments or questions for Dave?
No, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is having been involved with what is, I guess, the centralized question to all this for the vast majority of the time that I've spent involved in town government, which goes back, believe it or not, over 30 years. And that is sort of who owns the electric light division. And we had a relatively significant debate maybe 25 years ago, 20 years ago, over the role of our board, especially. There was a tremendous challenge made by a then board to the authority of the town manager. It resulted in actually a review of our entire town manager act. And it actually resulted, I guess, in the people who forced that issue, almost an inverse situation in which the town manager's authority over the electric light division was to some extent strengthened compared to what it had been before those amendments were brought forward to the state legislature. And I think the most important part which is really in that first line that the town manager articulates, which is that the electric light division is owned by the town of Danvers. And although I agree with Bill 100% that we owe an obligation to the ratepayers within our role and responsibility, and I think we do a good job, and I think Bill does a fantastic job in regards to that. But that at the end of the day, this is a town-owned entity and that the returns should be expected to go back to the town and to improve the town's overall operation. And in that respect, I think that the new program, and as a member of the Finance Committee as well, I've worn that hat as well on this. I think that the new policy is an excellent change and a step in a good direction from that standpoint. So yeah, I agree with Bill that I really appreciate the answers that have been provided. I also really appreciate the tremendous effort that Bill put in to look at this and the job that he's done with it. But you know, I'm glad that we're where we're at with this, and that we have increased to some extent that pilot program. So that's basically my 2 cents on this. But thanks.
Thank you, Mike. David, I guess I would question, do we want to have any further discussion on this, or do we just consider that it's now a closed issue? We may want to recoup it next month briefly, or summarize it just so that Eric can get up to speed on it.
Yeah, we could bring it up next month, Bill. It's definitely going to come up again when we do the review of the budget, which would be later on this fall, because that next, that 2021 pilot payment, we'll have to put that in when we present the operating budget to you folks in December. So it's going to come back up in December anyways when we do the budget conversation.
Okay, that's fine. As I say, I appreciate the detailed response and clarifications, and I think that was the goal here, was to fulfill our responsibilities both to the ratepayers and to Danvers Electric and the town. And I feel grateful that with the response that we've met those dual responsibilities, and we got a good answer from you and the town manager and the Finance Committee. Thank you. Okay, Dave, did you have anything else you wanted to report on as part of the Utility Director report?
I think that's enough, Bill. You guys are going to shut me off soon anyway. I think so. I'm good.
Okay. I've penciled in, Clint, did we receive any further public comments during the course of the meeting? Clint, I can't hear you.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we got 2 wrong phone calls and no emails.
Okay. All right, that takes care of that. We now move to the 9th item on the agenda, which is board member closing comments and correspondence. Mike?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much, Bill.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Last night, knowing that he couldn't attend, Eric gave me a phone call and asked me to pass on a couple of comments for him. The first one is a request that the meeting materials be simple and clear, and that perhaps a very brief 2 to 3 sentence summary be included at the top of each document to help get him as a new board member, and as we found with the PPFA, me as one who's experienced but often confused, understand what's the point of this document subject for the meeting. So we're in the environment that, okay, here's where we are, here's what we're talking about, and this is the main point of what we're trying to show. So that would be asking you folks on the staff, as you put these documents together for the meetings, to kind of take that step back, take a look at it, and say, okay, what's my main point? How do I state this in a way that either a new board member or a chairman of limited ability can understand it? So that's just a request for you guys.
Understood.
As we look ahead to the next meetings. The second message was, Eric thinks that Clint's graphs should be put on the website, particularly the one which shows our rates being, very much lower than the investor-owned utilities, and second only to Peabody and Middleton. Thinks that's a good thing for us to be publicizing to the town. And then kind of as a corollary to that, maybe including, whether it's another document, another graph, is maybe it's a frequently asked question, why did my bill go up? And it might be a tutorial on how to read the bill. Again, the basic thrust of Eric's comments being, let's make things simple and clear to people who look at these documents, whether they're meeting materials or the bill or the graphs, so that people who don't live in the electrical world like you guys do can look at them, see the main point, what's the message we're trying to communicate here, and be understandable. Again, it's clarity and simplicity of communication, both within the board, Danvers Electric meetings, and then also the face we present to our customers. And then the third idea was just something to consider. Should an annual message go out from Danvers Electric and the board to the ratepayers? And it might be something similar to what's in the annual town report. Again, it's just an idea to kick around for the future. Should we consider doing something like that? And what drove it, to a degree, as we clarified in the conversation, was water and sewer had to announce a rate increase. We had previously decreased rates with, I don't think, a lot of fanfare about that. And maybe that's because we knew it was going to be somewhat temporary, but it lasted for 6 months. So it was significant, and we didn't do any real publicity about that. So Eric and I were kind of in agreement on this, that the electric division, you team of people do a fantastic job for the town and the ratepayers in the town. But we don't do a whole lot of patting you guys on the back, and we should look at that. And then that kind of summarizes Eric's comments, but it fell right in line with, as I was thinking of my ideas for this meeting, or any questions I might want to ask, was I actually went back to Stan Svenson's. One of his favorite things was communication, message boards instead of banners, and another one was employee appreciation. Those are two of the things that I remember most about Stan as the chairman in my time on this board. And I think we've addressed the communication piece. Employee appreciation, I believe that there is not a plan to do an employee appreciation breakfast, as was done the last couple of years due to the COVID, and that is perfectly appropriate. However, I'd just like to ask you guys to consider, should we be doing something? And maybe something is as simple as a sweater with a town logo or electric division logo, or just something. I'd just like to ask the question for you guys to consider: should we be doing something for employee appreciation and, I'll say, Danvers Electric Division pride? Would something be appropriate? Just a question. So I'll move on to my next. I got several questions here that didn't happen to get addressed in the normal course of events. I think it was David last time mentioned a gravel pit solar opportunity. Anything happening with that, David?
I'll defer to Clint. Can answer that one for us.
Oh, Clint. Okay.
Hi, Bill. Yeah, so the gravel pit Desri solar contract, we entered into agreement on that. So we decided we were one of the 14 participants for the new solar project that we carved out. Roughly 3 megawatts of capacity for the town, and I believe that'll be going online 2023. I want to say.
Oh, great. Very good. Thank you. Dave, any update on the DPU case? I saw it last meeting. We completed and sent to the DPU our response to their questions. Have we heard anything since they've got it, or will they be studying it for a while?
Right now, we have not heard anything. Is that correct, Peter? Peter's saying that's correct. Yes, we have not heard anything. And you can see on the website, they have our responses listed and such. We've done all we need to do. Now we're in a waiting pattern.
Okay. All righty. Next one. It was just mentioned that I guess the selectmen would like to see a solar farm at Liberty Tree Mall. Anything on that?
So actually, we have not gone any further. Our plan right now is when we do a face-to-face meeting with Mark and we talk to them about the easement for the substation, we're going to bring it up with them and see if they're open to that idea when we have an audience with them. That's our plan. However, our focus is right now full speed ahead with the landfill solar project, see if we can get that one going. And we're working with the DEP on that right now. And then after that one, we have our Smith School solar as the next priority. So it's third on our list, and we're going to bring it up with them to see if there's an audience for it when we meet with them about the easement.
Okay, thank you. I had made a separate note here. Have we looked at pilot payments in other towns? But I guess that's academic at this point, given, we've already got a good response from you in the town. Thank you. I saw on the DPU report that we still have 34 municipal mercury vapor lamps in the town, and another 179, which I assume are those privately owned ones. Is there any plan to address those? I am sure they've had to take a back seat during the unusual situation we've been dealing with, but is there a plan to go back to them in the future?
Yeah, Mark's a lot of those have some unique characteristics, and some are just the basic private ones. Mark is trying to put that into the work plan.
Okay. A couple of other things we've mentioned in the past. One was a new light board member onboarding checklist. And I think you guys had started on that. I would assume it's been backburnered due to the COVID, but any progress? And is it still on
Definitely
the
that one's been on the back burner, Bill. I'll make a note.
Okay. Perfectly reasonable answer. And last one, or next to last one, so you can look ahead. My experience is every industry has its own language, and included in that language are what I used to say, we have a big problem with TLAs, which are 3-letter acronyms. And one of the businesses I worked in actually published what they called a FUI book, frequently used initials, so that somebody who was new to the business could look up and hopefully understand what people were talking about. Again, that's just something, if you throw it on the back burner, it's definitely not a high priority in these times. But for when a new board member comes on, having a FUI list would probably be helpful. And then my last comment is I want to thank Stephanie for the great job on the notes. Since we've had these remote meetings in particular, I'm sure it's much more challenging than normal and the quality, thoroughness, and completeness of the notes, I think, have been amazing. And I just want to say thank you, Steph.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. Now we set the next meeting. Sorry. Dave, do you have a suggestion?
So I was looking at October 20th is right after the holiday. Perhaps we slide to the 27th, Bill?
That works for me, but believe it or not, my schedule is fairly clear these days.
We're glad you're doing better.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling quite a bit better. It was, I'll tell you, the first week after the surgery was tough, but I'm starting to feel better now. Okay.
That works for me.
Tuesday, October 27th?
Excellent.
Okay. 8:30
David, before
a.m.
we go, the only thing is, maybe, Bill, are you around after this meeting if I came by to have you sign the
Oh, sure.
DP?
Sure.
So I can head over?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine. We'll be here.
okay, and
I
Mike,
gotta go
what
out
about
this
you?
afternoon, but- Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm gonna be leaving the office in a little bit. I'll probably go home for lunch. So, I mean, if that's
Okay.
easiest for you, Stephanie, I can meet you someplace today, if that.
Sure, I mean, I can drive by your house or, Whatever.
It's up to you. It's one signature, right? So it should be pretty quick. So, yeah, I'll be there probably between noon and 1. So.
okay. Should I go to the front door or do you want me to call you or what do you want? me-
No, whatever. That's like I say. You don't have to. I can come to the electric light too if it's easier for you. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to swing by here on your way home, you can do that. I can just
Yeah,
meet
why don't I do-
outside.
Yeah, why don't I do that, and I'll give you a quick email just saying that I'm outside and we can get it signed, and then we'll do that.
So are you thinking just before noontime?
Yeah, probably right around then. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, perfect.
perfect.
Okay, and I forget, Steph, what are we signing, the DPU?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, anybody? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Bill seconds. All those in favor? Mike?
Aye.
And Bill votes aye. Motion to adjourn is passed unanimously. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill. Great job. We really appreciate it.
Well, I'm sorry for the length of the meeting, but I think it was very thorough, very complete, a lot of good reports and good discussion, and I thank everybody involved. Have a good day.
Thanks, Bill. Take care.
Bill, I'll be over in about a half an hour if that's okay.
That's fine, Steph. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Bye-bye.